Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're making cabbage soup with ground beef. Now this is kind of a traditional Irish soup, and it's a soup, so if I'm putting something in it you don't like, leave it out. If I'm not putting something in it you want in it, add it to it. Now what I have here is a head of cabbage, about 1.5 pounds of ground chuck, and I've got what I call some seasoned vegetables. I've got a diced carrot, a couple sticks of diced celery or stalks of diced celery, a diced onion, and a potato. Now the potato is going to add some flavor, but it's also going to give our stock some body. And you need some tomato sauce. And we're going to talk about what I'm using here as we get to cooking it. You can add in some beef bouillon. We're going to do about 6 to 8 cups of water. You can substitute some of your water for beef stock if you wanted to, or even use chicken stock in it. But I'm using some better than bouillon, and you need salt and pepper and stuff like that. Now, normally what I would do is with the 80-20 meat, which is what I have, I'd start cooking it, drain some of the grease off, and then I'd add my vegetables to it. But in the interest of time, I'm going to brown my beef, and I'm going to start my seasoned vegetables while my beef is browning to save some time here. Just put a little seasoning in your beef, whatever you like. I'm just doing some salt and pepper, and since I'm not cooking my vegetables in it, I'm going to add a little onion powder to it because I want it to have some flavor. All right, that's good. Now I'm going to start these vegetables. Now like I said, normally I would start cooking my hamburger, my ground beef, and then I would add my vegetables into it. And there would be some fat in there. But since I'm cooking my hamburger separate, I'm going to add in just about a tablespoon of butter because I don't want my vegetables to stick to the bottom of the pot. And what I'm going to do is just saute these and let them sweat a little bit. I'm going to put the lid on them while they sit there and sweat. And that's going to put all this flavor into our soup. And it won't take none of this stuff very long. It's okay if they get a little bit brown, but they don't have to get brown. What you're trying to do is just get them tender and get all that flavor out of them. And if you really like celery, you can cut up some big chunks of celery in this. I like the flavor celery adds to soup and stuff, but I'm not crazy about the texture. So I chop mine up really fine so I get the flavor, but not the texture. Now, I'm going to add a little bit of salt to my vegetables because, oh, that's a little bit of pepper. Well, that's all right. We'll add a little bit of pepper in there too. Now I'm going to add a little bit of salt. A little bit of pepper is good on vegetables. It adds some seasoning. Just a little bit. That's going to help bring the juice out, and it's going to, of course, add flavor. Salt is the original flavor enhancer. Stir these a little bit, kind of mix them all up, get that salt all in there. And you want to do this kind of on medium heat. You don't want it too high because you don't want to burn them. And I'm really going to have to keep an eye on them on this gas because it doesn't adjust real well, or I'll have brown cabbage soup. And if it's brown, that's okay. That tastes good too. Now, while that's cooking, what I did with my cabbage, this is a whole head of cabbage, and I just diced it up into about 1-inch chunks. You can cut yours in long strips, you can cut it bigger, you can cut it however you want to. I like it this size. You do it how you want to do it. I like to be able to get it on the spoon or, you know, without it falling off everywhere. And for my tomato sauce, what I did is I have a can of, it's pasta sauce. Now, if you buy canned tomato sauce, it's going to cost you for the, you know, like the 15-ounce cans, you're going to pay over $1 a can for it. I got this, which is almost as big as 2 of those. And if you're using plain tomato sauce, you're probably going to want 2 cans in this. You can also use some diced tomatoes in it, or if you have home canned tomatoes, use those for sure. But I got this for like 80 cents. Grocery stores have sales. And this will substitute for 2 of those cans of sauce. And all it has in it is a little bit of garlic and onion, which, you know, you can add a little garlic to this. I'm not going to add any garlic to it because I have a little bit in here. And I don't want it to be too garlicky. But this will work fine. I mean, we're in a time when we kind of got to shop smarter for our groceries so that we can get a meal, you know, so we can afford to make a meal. Now the cabbage, you do want to make sure you take the stalk out of it, because this woody part right around the edge of the stalk, and I don't know if you can see it, but when you cut yours, you'll see a little dark, a line that's a little bit darker. That's very, very bitter. Now you can cut the heart out of this, and when I was a kid, that was a treat. We would cut the heart out and just sprinkle a little bit of salt on it and eat it, and it's delicious. But you want to make sure you get that stem out, because it's bitter and it will make your whole pot of soup taste bad. Like here you can see it easy where it's oxidized. You want to get all that out of there. That's real bitter. And of course, even if you were eating the stalk, you'd want to cut that oxidized end off. Okay, my vegetables are pretty close to done. They're all tender and they are starting to kind of stick. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scoop my ground beef in here. And it's pretty close to done. There might be just a tiny bit of pink left in it, but not much. And like I said, what vegetables you use in here, that's entirely up to you. And how brown you get them. I mean, you can really brown them, and that adds a lot of flavor to it. You can brown the butter before you put it in there, and the brown butter adds flavor. But, you know, all that's just kind of up to you. But I'm going to get this beef added in there. And how much fat you leave in your beef is also up to you. And we've talked about this before. Fat in food is what fills you up. So if you've got to feed a great big crowd on just a little bit of money, you might want to leave more of that fat in there, because that is what gets you full when you eat food, is the fat. And, you know, in the old days, they didn't drain fat out of anything unless they saved it to put it in something else. And they always made gravy out of the fat to go over whatever they were cooking. And that, you know, makes some gravy and some bread, and you can have a meal out of just a little bit of meat. Like I said, if you need to stretch your budget, leave the fat in there, because the fat is what fills you up, and people won't eat as much if the food has a higher fat content. Okay, you can see how much fat is left in this pan. Part of that, though, is actually the broth that came out of my hamburger. So that's not all fat. But anyways, I'm going to add a little bit of bouillon, better than bouillon, to it. So we'll get that flavor back. Now I'm going to give this a stir. And then I'm going to go ahead and dump my cabbage in and add some water to it. And you could put your tomato sauce in here now, just kind of, actually, I might go ahead and put my tomato sauce in. And then I'll add my cabbage, and then I'll add my water and my bouillon. If you are using plain tomato sauce, not the pasta sauce, you might want to add, or you will probably want to add, a tablespoon or so of sugar or brown sugar to it. This sauce already has sugar in it though, so I'm not adding any more. And the carrot is also going to give it just a little bit of sweetness. Now this cabbage is going to cook down, and I know that looks like a lot of cabbage for all the other stuff that's in there, but it's going to cook down, and there will be plenty of flavor in your cabbage soup. Basically, everything we have in this pot so far is just flavor. And you'll have plenty of ground beef in it too. But you can add a little less ground beef or a little more ground beef. If you've got some kind of leftover meat, you could even use some kind of leftover meat in this. You could ham, it would be good with ham. A different soup, but it would still be good with ham. You could put a little leftover roast in it. I'm going to go ahead and add my bouillon in there. I'm going to do just about a tablespoon. You don't have to add this. And like I said, you can substitute some of the water with beef stock if you want extra flavor in it. That's just a little extra flavor. But you don't have to. All this cabbage and our seasoned vegetables that we put in there, it's going to have plenty of flavor. Stir this one more good time. And then I'm going to get my cabbage in there, and I'm going to start adding some water to it. And like I said, between 6 and 8 cups. And again, that kind of depends on your taste. If you want a thinner broth in your soup, add more water. And you might not even be able to put this all in here at one time, or I might not be able to put it all in my pot at one time. I'm not. I'm going to have to add it and stir it, and add it and stir it. I'm going to start with 2 cups, and I'm going to add my water 2 cups at a time. And like I said, 6 to 8 cups of liquid is what this is going to take. I don't want it to be super runny, super soupy. And again, how much liquid you put in it is just up to you. And I'm going to go ahead and add another 2 cups to it before I even put the lid on it. And then I'll keep adjusting it here until I get it like I want it, because you can see this ain't got no liquid in it. And I do want to get my cabbage mixed in with my tomato sauce and my vegetables, and my ground beef. I want all that flavor in the cabbage. That's what makes the soup good. All right, some more water. Now I do always filter my water when I'm making soup. Anytime I'm using water in cooking, if it's gonna stay in what I'm making, I use filtered water. So if you have a water filter on your refrigerator, go ahead and filter your water whenever you're making soups. Or if you're putting water in a casserole or whatever, filter it. It makes it taste better. Now I've got about 4 cups of water in here. So my pot's probably not gonna hold more than another 2 cups. But I will definitely put another 2 cups in it after my cabbage cooks down a little bit. Now that I've got some water in here, so I don't have to worry about it scorching and burning, you just want to put the lid on it and let it sit there and simmer for 5 or 10 minutes until the cabbage starts to cook down. And when the cabbage gets tender, this is done, which probably ain't going to take much longer than 5 or 10 minutes, because cabbage just don't take long to boil. And that's basically all we're doing here, is we're boiling the cabbage, because everything else in here is cooked. I really should have used my big Lodge Dutch oven for this, but I thought since it was St. Patrick's Day and I was making the Irish soup, that I'd use my cool heirloom green pot here. I love this. Melinda got this for me. She found it somewhere at a yard sale or a flea market or something, and I try to use it every spring in at least one video because it's so pretty and it definitely fits with St. Patrick's Day and stuff. But anyway, we're going to get a little bit more liquid in this pot, but not too much. You probably are going to want close to 8 cups of liquid. I'm going to get about 6 in this just because that's all my pot will hold. A bigger pot would be better. You want a pretty big Dutch oven to make this in, because this is a big pot of soup. Or if you're not making it for that many people, of course, you can cut the recipe in half. Just use half a head of cabbage. And I have the windows open today. I had to just pause because somebody with a very loud muffler went by. But you might also hear some birds. And I'm sure you're going to hear my wind chimes in the background of this. That's not something we added in. It's just a really nice spring day. And I've got the windows open, airing the house out after this long, long winter. But while we're talking about St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick was a real person, and St. Patrick really, his life was a wonderful example of forgiveness. He was a prince who was taken captive and held in Ireland. He was later rescued, and then he went back to Ireland to preach the gospel. And I want to share Romans 12:14 with you in his honor. Bless them which persecute you. Bless and not curse. That truly is what being a Christian is. We have to forgive. And Jesus told us to bless those people who cursed us. Don't repay bad with bad. Repay it with good. I mean, how else is a bad person ever going to see good unless you show it to them? How are they ever going to see the forgiveness of Christ if you don't show it to them? And Jesus said, if you have been forgive, or your Father won't forgive you. That's after the Lord's Prayer. Not an exact quote there, but if you have forgiven, you should be able to show forgiveness. That's a part of that is the essence of being a Christian. And that's what St. Patrick did. And, you know, it's not all about the green beer, folks. It is about who the man was. And if you're going to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, you know, enjoy yourself, but remember who St. Patrick was. He forgave those who persecuted him. He blessed those who persecuted him. He blessed those who cursed him. And that's what, as Christians, we should be celebrating on St. Patrick's Day. And it's just, spring is a good time to celebrate. So make something special for dinner. Make you a pot of cabbage soup. We've got up corned beef and cabbage and some Irish soda bread, and have a traditional Irish dinner. And remember what St. Patrick did. Okay, everything is a bowl in here. And our cabbage is getting tender. It's pretty close. And how much you want your cabbage cooked, again, is up to you. If you want it super, super tender, or if you want just a tiny bit of crunch in it, you can leave a tiny bit of crunch in it. How much liquid's in your soup depends on your taste and the size of your pot. If you decide to use your pretty spring heirloom pot, you might not get as much liquid in it as you really want. But you can see the broth in this. It's got the tomato sauce in it, and it's really rich. It's not a super watery broth, and it won't be even when I add a little bit more liquid to it, because I do want a little more broth in here. I'm going to see how much I can get in my cute pot, because my cabbage is getting tender. I got 6 cups in there. I'm happy with that. And I just want to bring this back to a simmer, because you do always want to serve soup hot, especially if it has vegetables in it. I mean, nobody likes cold cabbage. And you can see the meat in there. You can see our little bits of carrots and stuff, adding a little bit of color in it. The carrot, I really like carrots in soup like this because it does add a little color. It also adds a little flavor, and it adds a tiny bit of sweetness. And like I said, if you're not using the spaghetti sauce, use 2 cans, like the 15-ounce cans of tomato sauce, and add a little sugar in it. And you're probably going to want a little bit of extra salt in it. And you might want to adjust the salt and pepper in this, or just put some on the table so folks can add however much they want, because some people like a lot of salt and some people don't like much at all. All right, that looks pretty good. So you could add a little more liquid to it if you want to, and cook it to suit your taste, and make you a big pan of Irish soda bread with it. And I'll link that recipe in the end of this video, and I'll also put it in the description. Yeah, I actually think, I actually think the 6 cups of water is their liquid, whatever you decide to use if you want to put some beef broth. I think 6 cups is enough for me. And you see, that's a pretty bowl of soup. It's got the meat in there, so it's going to fill you up. We've got the vegetables that we put in it. That's going to help fill you up. You're going to want some bread with this though, so make you some Irish soda bread. And this is good for any time in the spring. Cabbage is always cheap in the spring, starting now. They're going to have it on sale for less than 50 cents a pound. If you happen to find ground beef on sale, praise the Lord when you do. But if you happen to find ground beef on sale, you can make a pot of soup like this that will feed 8, 10, 12 people if you put some bread with it for less than $10, way less than $10. And when you can get a meal for less than $10 in today's times, you got a meal that's a keeper. But this is really, really good, and the flavors of the vegetables and the tomato really give the cabbage a good flavor. So even folks that ain't crazy about cabbage might like this. Give it a try. Keep this recipe, and it is a very traditional soup. It's an old recipe, and stuff that's been around as long as this soup is definitely worth trying, making, keeping, and it's one of those hard times foods that will get you through these ridiculous grocery prices. I want to thank you so much for joining us again in the Hillbilly Kitchen. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. Make sure you don't already have a D on the end of subscribe, because that means you're already subscribed. But if there ain't no D on the end of that subscribe button, give it a click. Share all of our videos with your friends. And until next time, remember to put God first.